Discover the incredible touching stories of Mobsters. 5 amazing life-changing musicals exposed. Tony Romano had seen enough pain in his 30 years to fill a musical the kind that had the power to move hearts and change lives. As he wiped down the counter of his family's diner in a crumbling Chicago neighborhood, the sweet scent of simmering marinara mixed with the tang of hope danced in the air. It was like the city itself breathed dreams and sorrows in equal measure, each echoing through the narrow streets, each one somehow connected to the Romano legacy half-restaurant, half-mobster hideaway. Every day, Tony worked hard, balancing family loyalty with a burning desire to turn the tides for his community. His hands were calloused, his heart heavy, but his spirit was unyielding. He just wanted to overturn the shadows cast by his lineage, just like his beloved grandmother had always wished. And then came the news of a fundraiser, a beacon of hope for his economically struggling neighborhood. It promised a chance to shed light on the dire issues facing families like his. People packed into the diner, voices rising in excitement. The stirring feeling of unity was enough to spark a fire in his chest, igniting dreams of truly serving his community. But with that excitement came a darker current. Just as quickly, his cousin Frankie, a fast-talking man with eyes that could cut glass, started scheming to expand their family's mob operations. "Tony, you have to see the potential. Money can help us do good, right?" he'd say, smirking. For Tony, this was like a punch to the gut. To accept Frankie's idea meant abandoning the very principles he yearned to uphold. Each night, Tony found refuge in conversations with Mr. Garcia, the golden-hearted veteran who lived just down the block. They shared tales of grit and honor, their hearts bound by the hope that one person could make a difference. As the diner transformed into a stage for local talent, music spilled into the streets, blending stories through song and dance. Each performance sang of struggle, resilience, a community standing as one. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Yet, amid the joyous music and laughter, tragedy loomed closer. A betrayal struck painfully from within, fracturing the fragile bond Tony had built with his neighbors. Hearts that had begun to mend now stood threatened. The weight of loyalty felt heavier. He could feel the storm rising inside him. Could he really betray his family when they needed him most? But could he also betray the community that had become his lifeblood? With the music carrying the community's heartbeat, Tony stood at a crossroads, a familial legacy on one side, community welfare on the other. His heart pounded, pulling him, urging him with the rhythm of every note sang that Thursday night. He looked out at the faces filled with hope, wonder, and fear. Would it be enough to choose love and integrity over loyalty and legacy? The tension hung thick in the air, and the answering silence beckoned for his choice. How would he break the mold and step into the man his grandmother had always known he could be? The voices in the diner faded into a murmur as Tony's gaze swept over the crowd. He could see the anticipation in their eyes, the weight of their dreams woven into every hopeful glance. He inhaled deeply, the aromas of home-cooked pasta and baked bread igniting something inside him. The community, they believed in him. "Tony," someone called out, breaking the spell. It was Carla, a bright-eyed waitress who always had a smile, despite the troubles around her. "You're up. Time to show those folks what you've got." The encouragement sent a jolt of energy through him. He wished he could just be the man everyone expected him to be, but the shadows hung tightly around his heart. It felt wrong to take center stage while his family's dark dealings threatened to drown out everything good, the very thing he wanted to champion. He could already hear Frankie's voice in his head, reminding him that money had power. What if they could help their community with the resources gained through questionable means? The thought made him sick. As he pushed through the crowd towards the small stage, Tony's heart raced. The worn wooden planks creaked beneath him like the weight of the world rested on his shoulders. In that moment, he felt more exposed than an actor on opening night. He grabbed the microphone, his hands trembled. The familiar face of Mr. Garcia sat at a front table, a steady gaze filled with belief. Maybe it was time to share more than just music, maybe it was time to share a truth. Hi everyone, Tony started, swallowing hard. I know tonight is about celebrating, but I want to say something that's been weighing on me. The crowd quieted, leaning in. For years, my family's name has come with baggage. A lot of it heavy, and I've been caught between what's right and what's easy. He let the words hang in the air like a lingering note. Faces turned inward as if pondering their own crossroads. I grew up learning to be loyal to family. But I've also learned that sometimes family can lead you down dark paths. I want to do better. I want us all to do better. A murmur of agreement washed over the crowd. Some nodded. A few clapped softly. That small ripple of support helped. I want this diner to be a safe place, he continued, passion igniting his words. Not just a front for something else. I want it to represent our hopes, our dreams, the beautiful messiness of being human. He could see Frankie's silhouette at the bar, arms crossed, eyes fuming. Tony's heart pounded as he dared to cast a glance at his cousin, trying to gauge the impact of his words. Would Frankie see this as betrayal, or would he recognize the necessity for change? The room buzzed with murmurs, then silence again. It's time we stop living in the shadows. Let us build this community up together. As the last words left his lips, Tony felt lighter, yet the shadows still lurked. There was an undeniable tension brewing beneath the surface. When Frankie erupted into laughter, the kind that sent chills down Tony's spine, the world around him blurred. You think you can just throw our family's legacy away for a song? He sneered, eyes narrowed. The air turned electric. This was his moment of truth, and it teetered on a razor's edge. Tony had to decide who he truly was, while the community watched on, waiting for the resolution. Would he stand up to Frankie, risking everything to protect the dreams of the people he loved? Or would he give in to the darkness, losing himself and them in the process? Tony's breath quickened, the laughter vibrating in the hollow of his chest as he met Frankie's glare. Every eye in the diner was on him, buzzing with energy like a live wire. He could feel the weight of their expectations, could almost hear their silent prayers. Why were you laughing, Frankie? Tony shouted, his voice rising above the din. You think it's a joke? Just another night at the diner? The words tumbled out, sharp and unfiltered. He could see the surprise rippling through the crowd, moments before Frankie regained his composure. Come on, Tony, Frankie said, standing up, his voice booming. You think this little talk is gonna change anything? You really believe they care about your fairy tales? His sneer sliced through the air, challenging Tony's resolve. The laughter had faded, replaced by a tense silence. Carla stood frozen, her gaze flicking between the two men, anxiety etched on her face. I don't care if they believe me, Tony shot back, the heat in his voice rising. I care that we're better than what they expect. We can be more than just shadows. We need to try. Try? Frankie spat, advancing a step, crowding Tony's space. You really think these people want change? They want the comforts we provide even if it is dirty money. They need us. Something snapped inside Tony. The tension coiled tighter, ready to spring. No, Frankie. They deserve better. We all do. Mr. Garcia, usually calm and collected, finally spoke up. What do you want, Tony? To risk everything for some noble cause? His voice was steady, but underlying concern echoed in the words. Tony looked at him, searching for something guidance, understanding. Yes. To have a diner that isn't linked to fear, to a family name that suffocates under secrets. Do you think we just forget the past? Frankie's voice was calm now, but there was danger lurking under it. You want to throw it all away? Just like that? He glanced at the audience, noting the faces of the people who had supported him. Each of them represented a story, a dream, a life. Some were weary from the weight of their choices, while others were filled with hope. But were they ready for this? Don't you want something more for them? Tony's voice softened, sincerity pouring from every word. We can begin to change everything together. Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating, until Mr. Garcia nodded slowly. I think he's right, Frankie. We can't keep relying on the past when there's a future waiting for us. Frankie's expression darkened. He looked torn, his confidence rattled. And what do you think the future holds, Tony? There was both curiosity and menace in his tone. I think it holds a chance to be free, Tony answered, a spark of hope igniting within him. A chance for us to be honest with ourselves and with each other. We can help rebuild this community beyond fear and shadows. The crowd, once static, started to murmur, assessing their own choices and finally, perhaps, feeling the possibility. A wave of solidarity washed over the room, an invisible thread stitching hearts together as they began nodding in agreement. But Frankie clenched his fists, frustration crossing his features. And what if I say no? He challenged. What if I say I won't be a part of this anymore? Tony shot back, feeling a surge of determination. The moment hung in the air, poised, as the crowd held its collective breath. This was one step closer to defining who he was. But would it cost him everything? With tension rushing through him, Tony realized he was standing on the edge of a chasm. Everything could change in an instant if only he was willing to leap. Would he take that leap alone? Or could he find allies among the people who had always believed in him? The stakes had never felt higher. The diner fell into a thick, charged silence. Tony's heart raced, the weight of every gaze pressing down on him. He felt like he was standing on the precipice of something massive, teetering on the edge of change. Frankie's eyes pierced through him, searching for weakness. But all Tony could muster was unwavering determination. This was more than just a fight over business or reputation. It was about legacy, about rewriting the narrative that had long defined their lives. Are we really going to let fear control us? Tony's voice broke the silence again, softer now but laced with steel. What have we got to lose? We've been living under a shadow for too long, our homes, our lives. It's time we gave ourselves the chance to shine. The room hummed with tension, and he could see the flickers of uncertainty on the faces around him. Some looked ready to speak up, to support him, while others held back, still caught in the grasp of Frankie's whispers that had always promised safety in the known. Carla shifted uneasily, her hands fidgeting with the fabric of her apron. What are you asking us to do, Tony? She finally squeaked, her voice small but steady. You want us to risk everything for... What? For honesty, for a chance at peace, Tony replied, his passion igniting a flicker of hope in her eyes. We owe it to ourselves and to those who came before us who never had the chance to break free. We can become a family here, not just in name but in practice. Frankie laughed, a harsh, derisive sound echoing through the diner. Family? Since when does family mean risking your neck for an ideal? What if you fall, Tony? And what if we all fall with you? The laughter was like a dagger, but Tony wouldn't back down. What if we fly? Mr. Garcia stood uneasily from his seat, uncertainty evident on his face. The question Tony poses is one we've all felt, he said slowly, giving a slight nod. But what if we strive for more? A life free of this burden? Frankie's face darkened. You're all lost if you think running away from the past will lead you to anything good. Nostalgia has always held us together. Why change that? The murmurs were growing louder. People shared glances, the room crackling with conflicting emotions. Tony could see at the stirrings of something new, something they all craved but feared to pursue. Because past ties us but future sets us free, Tony countered, grounding the fear they felt in his conviction. Don't you want a world where our kids can dream without the weight of our choices shackling them? That struck a chord. Carla, voice steady now, said, I don't want my grandchildren to inherit our mistakes. I want them to have a clean slate. Enough! Frankie barked, his anger radiating through the room like heat. You think you can just walk away? You think this community would accept you if you tried to leave our legacy behind? Not if they dive into the past we're trapped in. Tony shouted back, Change starts at our own doorsteps. Are we not strong enough to take that leap together? A swell of voices began to rise, people speaking over each other, debating, questioning, and, finally, joining in solidarity. Hope threaded through the din. Tony felt it surging in him too, pulsing with energy he had long thought lost. He stepped forward, his expression fierce and hopeful. Together, we can be the architects of a new future. We can create something beautiful. Suddenly, the door swung open, and with it came a chilled whisper of the outside night, a reminder that they were stitched into something larger than this diner, this moment. Tony turned to look, and for a second, time seemed to freeze. An unfamiliar figure loomed in the doorway, bathed in the glow of streetlights. What lay behind them? A challenge? An opportunity? The breath in Tony's lungs hitched. What did this unexpected arrival mean for the dream he was igniting? The figure at the door was a silhouette, shifting as if debating whether to step into the fragile warmth that enveloped the diner. A heavy coat hung on them, and a fedora cast a shadow over their face, obscuring expression. But Tony could feel the energy change. It was like a storm had just blown over the sun. "Who's that?" someone whispered, breaking the spell. Frankie's eyes narrowed as he leaned forward, clearly unsettled. "That's Joe," he muttered under his breath, but his voice carried. "What's he doing here?" Tony's eyes flicked from Frankie to the mysterious figure, heart pounding with both anticipation and dread. He sensed this was no coincidence. Joe was a name whispered in dark corners, a ghost of decisions made and paths taken. This could be bad news, or it could be a lifeline that floated him toward the shore. "Hey, Joe," Tony called, his voice steadier than the thrum of adrenaline in his veins. "You're here to join us?" Joe hesitated, finally stepping into the light. His expression was unreadable, but the way he held his shoulders spoke of burdens long carried. "Tony," he began, his voice deep and gravelly, traveling through the stunned silence. "I came to listen. You've stirred something in the air tonight. I'm not sure what it is yet." Frankie scoffed, crossing his arms defensively. "You don't belong here, Joe. This isn't your fight. You don't get to stir the pot after you've walked away." But Tony could feel the shift. Joe could be the wild card they needed. "Everyone is welcome if they want a different story," he said, glancing at the others whose eyes sparkled with curiosity. "What do you have to say?" The diner, once filled with anxious whispers, turned into a cauldron of expectation. It wasn't just Tony's fight anymore. People leaned in, taut with interest. Joe took a moment and then nodded, like he'd made a decision. "I've seen the way you all live," he started. "I've made my choices, maybe not the best ones, but I know the cost of fear. The power of community is real. I walked away thinking I was saving myself, but I only built more walls. I thought it would protect me. Instead, it only isolated me." A murmur slid through the crowd. It wasn't just Joe. Many had lived parts of that story, people who had chased freedom only to find emptiness in solitude. Tony stared into Joe's eyes, desperate to elicit more of this raw honesty. "So what do we do?" Carla asked, suddenly emboldened. "How do we change our fate?" Joe took a long breath, fortifying himself. "First, admit to each other what we've lost. Then, make a plan to reclaim it together. We're stronger that way. Are you willing to help us?" Tony asked, hope wedged into his voice. Joe gave a small smile, something genuine glowing in the shadows of his face. "If you're willing to build that bridge, I'll help you cross it." The tension shifted again, this time thick with possibility. Faces that had been rigid with fear began to soften. The weight of unearthing buried longings replaced the dread that hung in the air. Tony's heart surged. "Together we can do this. It's not just about breaking free. It's about reaching for something better, for everyone." The conversation swelled, laughter mixed with determination filling their hearts. But deep down a question lingered. Would they really be able to rise above their past, or was it too late? Just as the voices began to harmonize, pulling together like threads stitching a torn quilt, Frankie finally shoved his chair back. The sound was sharp. "This isn't over," he growled, storming out. Tony watched him vanish into the night, suddenly incredibly aware of the weight of what lay ahead. Would Frankie return with a plan to pull them back into the shadows? The diner was alive with discussions, people ready to forge forward. Yet, the door hung open, a reminder that not everyone was ready to embrace the light. What awaited them out there? A reckoning or a renaissance? The door swung slightly in the night air, a silent witness to the tension that lingered in the room. Tony felt the buzz of conversation around him, a mix of excitement and uncertainty. People were rallying behind Joe's words, but there was a shadow in their midst. Frankie had taken a step into darkness, and his absence clawed at Tony's heart. Should we go after him? Carla asked, her brow furrowed with concern. No, Joe replied, his voice firm yet measured. Let us give him space. He needs to find his own way just like the rest of us. But what if he doesn't come back? Tony interrupted, his voice barely above a whisper. The words hung heavy in the air, laden with the fear of loss. But he was met with nods of empathy. They all held a sliver of hope, no matter how small. An older man at the counter, worn and gray, broke the thick silence. You've both stirred something in me too. I've walked this lonely road far too long, thinking I could do it alone. Maybe it's time for the rest of us to face our fears together. Tony could have sworn he felt the walls closing in, not out of claustrophobia but an overwhelming sense of unity. We need to share our stories, our burdens, he suggested, glancing at each face in the room. What have we lost? What do we want to reclaim? With that, the diner became a refuge of confessions. Carla spoke first about her dreams crushed under the weight of expectations. I wanted to be a painter, but I buried that part of me to fit in, she revealed, her voice trembling but steadfast. The others followed suit. Joe admitted that he once had a love who left because he couldn't drop his guard. The man at the counter shared tales of a son lost to choices he couldn't control. Each story, like a thread, wove them closer together, stitching the fabric of their community with shared pain and unreachable aspirations. But amid those revelations, Tony felt a crack in his own heart. He had lost so much too, and he needed to dig deep. I lost my father when I was young. He had dreams he never got to chase because he was always hustling for our family. I thought I had to wear that mask of strength, but maybe it's time to be vulnerable. There was a hush, swallowed by the gravity of his words. A sea of recognition washed over the faces around him. Vulnerability was scary, but it was also freeing. In those moments, the diner felt less like a physical space and more like a haven for growth. The emotional bandages wrapped around them began to loosen. Hope swirled in the air, mingling with the smells of coffee and grilled sandwiches. Yet, outside, the night deepened. Each minute stretched with uncertainty. Tony couldn't shake the feeling that Frankie had stepped into something he couldn't easily escape. Would his friend find his way back? Or was this the turning point where their paths forever diverged? As conversations ebbed and flowed, one lingering question bounced to the forefront of Tony's mind. What if Frankie returned with allies who believed in fear more than hope? The uncertainty buzzed like a fly he couldn't swat away. Would the light they found tonight be strong enough to stand against the darkness he might bring? The diner became a bubble, vibrant and alive, but the world outside was growing colder. What awaited next was never clear. With every heartbeat, a new wave of tension rose, knitting the vibrant community together while a storm brewed just beyond their walls. What would the dawn bring? A new beginning or a desperate fight for survival? The clock on the diner wall ticked, punctuating the rising tension. Each second felt like an eternity. Tony's heart raced as voices merged into a collective hum, but his mind kept drifting back to Frankie. The warmth inside was offset by the chill creeping under the door. Maybe he just needs to be out there, to figure things out alone. Joe's voice broke into Tony's thoughts. It was meant to soothe, but desperation clawed at Tony's chest. Alone isn't what he needs right now, Joe, he replied, the edge of worry sharpening his tone. He needs us. Just as he spoke, the door creaked open wider, the wind gusting in. They all turned. It was the older man, still at the counter, who spoke again. Life is a funny thing. We think being solitary makes us stronger. But it can destroy us too. Especially in moments like this. He looked around, locking eyes with everyone, his gaze steady and honest. Frankie may think he is alone out there. But he is not. We're all connected. Our stories are intertwined. Silence fell again, a sacred pause. The smell of coffee thickened, and the clinking of silverware sounded like whispers. Each person sat with their thoughts, the vulnerability they had just experienced thickening the air around them. Carla reached for Tony's hand, squeezing it tightly. What if we did something? What if we found a way to bring him back? Show him he is not alone? Her idea lit a spark. We should go after him, Tony urged, enthusiasm surging as he felt a wave of determination wash over him. The more he spoke, the more he could envision the possibilities. Let us track him down. Remind him why we're all in this together. Maybe that's the key. If he can see what he is leaving behind, maybe he'll choose to come back. Do we know where to even start? Joe asked, his skepticism fighting against their newfound hope. Tony took a breath. If we gather our stories, each one we shared tonight, we can reach him. We can make him see he is part of this. If he feels the warmth of our connection, he'll know he is not alone. The room buzzed with an urgency, as if the very walls were cheering them on. With every heart laid bare, they could craft a message woven from every confession shared. What do we need? Carla asked, her eyes sparkling with newfound purpose. Let us meet all together. Share our stories again, expand them. We'll write letters, create something special, Tony said, fire lighting in his belly. He needs to feel it, understand the bonds we share tonight. As plans swirled, the room transformed. The diner turned into a war room, with every person suddenly embracing their mission. Laughter mingled with chatter, and hope filled their hearts. Yet, outside, darkness continued to loom. The wind howled, and rain began to sprinkle against the windows. Tony sensed the storm approaching, a troubling omen that only intensified his worries. Frankie has been out there so long. I just hope he hasn't lost himself completely, he thought, dread creeping at the edges of their excitement. But buried under that dread was determination. A fierce love for their friend that would not wane. We can do this, he whispered to himself. Carla turned serious. We will find him. Together. In that moment, a quiet strength formed in the room. A fragile bond shimmering like a thread of silver. Something was changing. A new path unfolding. Tony felt the weight lift slightly, just enough to dream of their friend wandering back through the diner doors. A ray of hope gleaming with him. But just as fear had gripped his heart, a chilling thought spiked through. What if Frankie came back changed? Would he still recognize the friendships that stitched them together? And so, as conversations flared, he wondered, could love be stronger than the darkness that lured Frankie away? What would it take to reach him before it was too late? The rain fell heavier, tapping rhythmically against the diner windows. Tony felt it in his bones, the weight of the storm matching the worry thrumming in his heart. The group's chatter faded into the background as he stared out at the darkened streets. Where was Frankie now? The thought twisted in his gut like a dagger. Okay, let us get down to business, Joe finally said, pulling Tony's attention back. We can't just sit here dreaming. We need a plan. Yes, a plan. Carla chimed in, brightening the mood again with her enthusiasm. We have to gather what we can. Memories, pictures, whatever it takes to show him he is loved. Memories, Tony echoed, trying to ground himself in her words. That's good. Frankie loved the times we all spent together at that old baseball field. Maybe we can start there. Didn't he have those old photos tucked away? Joe tried to recall. The suggestion hung between them, promising echoes of laughter and the sight of smiles so easily forgotten. Beside him, Carla's face lit up. Yes, the ones from that summer camp. We can go back to the field, reminisce. It will remind him of what we shared. Tony's heartbeat steadied. It felt right, like the first breath of fresh air after a storm. They devised a plan. It felt like a race against time. Joe would handle the logistics, gathering supplies and contacting others who knew Frankie. Carla was in charge of collecting old photos and shared stories. The group would convene at the baseball field under the glow of the moon, a beacon of hope in the night. "Let us make it a gathering," Carla suggested. "We'll invite everyone who cares about Frankie. He needs to see how much he means to all of us. We'll make him remember." The excitement in the room began to shift from anxiousness to a stirring motivation. Tony even smiled, envisioning the day they would all stand there, together, creating a wave of love strong enough to pull Frankie back from the edge. "Okay then, let us do this." With every heartbeat they sounded more sure. "Together we will bring him home." When they stood to leave, the wind howled once again, as if cautioning them. Yet, each member was fueled by resolve. They knew that darkness was always lurking, but their light was brighter when united. As Tony stepped out onto the slick pavement, he felt the chill on his skin, but didn't he flinch. He would fight against it for Frankie. The thought of their friend lost out there through rain and storm gripped his heart anew. But he also held onto the tight bond formed in the diner, the stories and experiences that were too precious to lose. Later, at home, surrounded by old photos and nostalgia, he unearthed a picture of Frankie from their baseball days. A young man with a wide smile holding a trophy above his head, sun-soaked and blissfully unaware of the challenges that lay ahead. Tony ran his fingers over the image, recalling the way joy had seemed eternal back then. "What if he has lost all that?" he whispered. "What if he can't come back to us?" Yet deep down, Tony knew they had a chance. The next day, they would gather at the field. They would stand as a chorus of voices, shouting to Frankie from the shadows he had hidden in. The thought filled him with hope, even a flutter of excitement. But looming just on the horizon was a thought that chilled him. What if the memories weren't enough? As he clung to the image in his hands, he felt a fleeting doubt. Might they have waited too long to reach him? Tomorrow would reveal everything. Would their friend respond to the call of friendship? Or would they find an empty space where Frankie used to stand? The rain had eased, but the air remained thick with tension. Morning light filtered weakly through the clouds, casting a gray hue over the baseball field as Tony arrived. It felt surreal to be here again, where laughter once echoed and victories were celebrated. Now it felt like a hollow shell, waiting for the warmth of memories long since faded. Joe was already there, roll of paper in one hand, a box of old supplies in the other. "Hey Tony, I got some chairs and lights. Thought we might need them." "Good thinking," Tony replied, forcing a smile, though his gut twisted with worry. Would their efforts be enough to bring Frankie back? Carla showed up next, her arms overflowing with scrapbooks and photographs. "Look at all these. They're going to love this," she exclaimed, her excitement palpable, even as Tony tried to temper the hopes swelling in his chest. "Let us set up over there under that big tree. It'll give us some shelter if it starts again," Joe suggested, pulling Tony from his thoughts. The three of them began arranging the makeshift area, laying out chairs and stringing lights across the branches, transforming the field into a small gathering spot. "Remember the time we all made that human pyramid?" Carla laughed as she flipped through the pages of a scrapbook, pointing at a faded image. "We thought we were so cool until we fell." Tony chuckled, the sound feeling foreign in his chest. "And then we lost that game." They all laughed, but the laughter carried a hint of bittersweet nostalgia as they continued. More friends began to trickle in, each one carrying their own memories, some bringing additional items for the gathering: a cake, more photos, even a speaker for music. Slowly, the field was becoming alive again, the energy lifting a little weight from Tony's shoulders. "Do you think Frankie will show?" Joe's voice broke through the chatter, a question that hung in the air heavier than they all hoped. "He has to," Carla replied, although the slight tremor in her voice spoke of her own uncertainty. "He needs this. We all do." With every familiar face that arrived, a sense of comfort wrapped around Tony. Their shared stories, the laughter, the support, it was beautiful. But thoughts of Frankie lingered, casting a shadow that wouldn't budge. In a perfect world, Frankie would just walk in, smile at them, and the relief would wash over everyone. But this wasn't a perfect world. As twilight began to settle, the sky turned shades of orange and purple, The air felt electric with anticipation. Together, they gathered in a circle, hands interlocked, whispering shared memories, grounding themselves in love for their missing friend. Let us send a message to him. Tony's heart raced, knowing the significance of this moment. We'll call out his name. Let him hear how many of us care. They all nodded, brimming with determination. On the count of 3, they would unleash a chorus, a tidal wave of sound that would reach beyond shadows, beyond doubts. 1, 2, 3. Frankie. The name echoed through the field, bouncing off the trees, consuming the emptiness around them. Every voice, every tone wrapped around the syllables. A plea, a promise, come back home. Silence followed, wrapping them in quiet uncertainty. A heartbeat passed, and Tony's stomach twisted tightly again. Would Frankie respond? Just then, a rustle came from the edge of the trees. Hope burst through the air like fireworks, but the shape that emerged wasn't what they expected. It was a scruffy stranger, soaked from the rain, looking lost and uncertain. The anticipation hung in the air like an unfulfilled promise. Who are you? Carla asked, stepping forward, heart racing. Before he could answer, Tony felt a surge of emotions flowing through him. What if this was a sign, a twist in the story? What if Frankie wasn't far away at all? And just as quickly, doubt loomed again. What if the stranger held answers to questions they were unprepared to hear? The tension in the air felt like a tightrope, balancing hope and despair. Tony's heart raced as he squinted into the fading light, searching the figure that stepped hesitantly from the trees. Had he finally found the face of his missing cousin? As the stranger approached, the group silently exchanged glances, curiosity mixed with concern. Finally he spoke, his voice low and rough. I'm looking for Frankie Romano. Tony felt the air shift. You know him? The stranger nodded, his eyes darting around the circle. Yeah, I was with him. He wanted to come here, but... His voice trailed off, uncertainty etched on his face. Where is he? The question came out sharper than Tony intended, a rush of adrenaline underlining his worry. The man took a deep breath, trying to steady himself amidst the gathering crowd. He is struggling, okay? He thinks he has to prove something to himself, to his family. But he is in over his head. A murmur rippled through the group. Tony clenched his fists, battling the storm of emotions inside. We have to get him back, he said, his voice resolute. We have to remind him that he is not alone in this. The stranger shifted his weight. He thinks he can handle things on his own. If you really want to reach him, you're going to have to show him. Prove to him that coming back isn't a weakness. That's why we're here. Carla jumped in, her voice steady despite the quivers in her heart. We're not here to drag him back, but to let him know we're waiting, ready to embrace him as he is. We've all seen enough darkness, we want to shine a light on what truly matters. Tony turned to the stranger, desperation mirroring in his eyes. Can you take us to him? We can show him. We can all show him. With a pause, the stranger nodded. I can try, but you need to be ready for anything. He might fight you too. They exchanged determined looks. Together, Joe declared, a solid anchor amid the chaos. We'll do it together. As the group set off along the path through the trees, Tony felt a mix of fear and determination surge within him. Each step intensified his resolve. The memories they shared, life lessons stitched through laughter and tears, would serve as their guiding stars. The night air was thick with anticipation as they reached an abandoned building, dark and crumbling, a far cry from home yet oddly fitting. This was a place of shadows, where lives could easily be lost in turmoil. But they were ready to light it up. Stay close, the stranger instructed, pushing open the splintering door. The scent of mildew filled their nostrils, but they pressed on, hearts beating faster in sync. Inside, the flickering light from a lone bulb illuminated the corner where Frankie fidgeted with a worn-out baseball glove, an old trophy showing signs of wear at his feet. He looked up, surprise painted across his features. What are you doing here? Tony took a deep breath, stepping forward, brave and earnest. Frankie, we've been looking for you. We want you back. You don't need to do this alone. Frankie shot a glance toward the group, an uninvited rush of guilt hitting his chest. "What do you want from me, Tony?" "To help," Tony replied, his voice steady despite the tension radiating between them. "You don't have to fight a war on your own. These people, they care about you. We all do." One by one, faces from the diner stepped into view, a tapestry of connection behind him. "You're not alone," Carla echoed, fighting against visions of Frankie lost forever. "We've all made mistakes. We've all had to reckon with our pasts. But together we can climb out of the shadows." Frankie's jaw tightened, uncertainty gripping him. "I don't know if I can ever change," he whispered, the vulnerability hitting hard. "Change is possible. We can help you see that." Tony extended his hand, his heart in the open, like an invitation to the light. "Remember the times we spent together? The laughter, the victories? That's not gone. It's right here waiting for you." He gestured toward the group. "We're your family, Frankie. We want to share our lives with you again. Not just the past, but the beautiful, messy future that's yet to come." A flash of hope cut through Frankie's trepidation, the light igniting something deep within him. The tension that had anchored him wavered. "Let in the light, Frankie," Joe urged, a steadfast support simmering behind Tony. "You don't have to carry everything alone. We can rise again. Together." Moments felt like an eternity as Frankie searched their faces, finally surrendering to a wave of emotion as memories of warmth and shared dreams flooded his mind. Slowly, he took a step forward, shivering under the weight of realization. "I don't want to lose this." "Then don't," Tony said softly, overwhelmed with relief. "Come back to us. We need you and you need us." In that moment, the shadows receded and, one by one, the rest of the group stepped toward Frankie, encircling him, sharing their warmth and love. The connection was electric, a gust of newfound hope filling the void that had grown too large. Frankie's head hung low, but the realization washed over him, sinking into the depths of his soul. He wasn't just linked by blood. He was bound by something greater. "Okay," he whispered, barely audible, but every heart in the room resonated with that one choice. Together they would face the challenges ahead, their stories intertwined like the stitches on a patchwork quilt, each thread signaling strength and resilience as they began to leave the old building. Stepping into the moonlit night, laughter mingled with tears. They felt the weight of loss lift. They were stepping into a new beginning, embracing the potential of their stories to silhouette a brighter future. And as the stars twinkled overhead, a new chapter unfolded. The past would always anchor them, but the future beckoned brightly, alive with possibilities, reflecting the warmth that had stitched their hearts together. Now, more than ever, Tony knew they would forge ahead, together, lighting up every corner that darkness might touch. It was done. They had turned the page to hope, and they were ready for whatever awaited them next. But as they headed to the diner, laughter mixing with the night air, the urgency within Tony begged for support to continue sharing their journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories that could change lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. It really matters. Comment your reactions and feelings about this. Ending your voices bring life to this community. And don't wait not even one more second to share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Only true fans understand the importance of lending their support.